Welcome everyone back to this lesson on arrays. We're going to be looking for the last part of this lesson on multidimensional arrays. Now, as I mentioned in the first part, arrays are simply data structures which allow us to store data in main memory in a more efficient way, right? So then when we access that data, we can do it more efficiently. So with multiple dimension arrays, it just sort of adds an extra step of efficiency when we're storing more data, basically. So the way we can declare one of these arrays is like this. So if we say, for example, numbers, like that, and we're going to store into this array, we're going to start off by adding our square brackets. So I'm just going to add 2 square brackets like this. Now this is where it gets a little bit different, not too different, so don't be afraid, but just a little bit different. So now we're going to add another square bracket inside this one, and here we're going to add these numbers. So we're going to say, for example, 1, 3 and 5, and then we're going to add a square bracket like this. We're going to add a comma, and then we're going to add another table here. So here, let's say we're going to add the numbers 2, 4, and 6. And then we're going to add another table, and let's add the numbers 7, 8, and 9 to this last table right here. So what we notice here is that we have 3 tables, or 3 different arrays, which have 3 items each. And if we want to access one of these items, let's say, for example, we want to access this item 6 right here, so that we want to output it, let's say. So what we do is we're going to say output, and then we call the identifier as usual, so we say numbers. Alright, so now in the first square brackets, we need to look not at the items. So the index for number 2 would still be 0, for number 4 it would be 1, for number 6 it would be 2. So we don't actually say 2 here, because the first square brackets are not looking at the index location, rather the first index is looking at which table in this multidimensional array the item you're looking for is. So if we look at these tables as individual items, then this table right here would be in index 0, and this table here would be in index 1, and this table would be in index 2. So what we're doing is we're just looking at the individual tables as individual items, and what this number 2 would have to be number 1, like this. So we're saying look at table 1, and within table 1 look at index 2. So this first square bracket is looking at this index, or this table right here, and within that table we're looking at index number 2, which is going to output number 6, like this. Now it might seem like a completely different thing to you, but actually in reality, you know, everything that you can apply to single dimensional arrays, like the ones we've done previously, can be applied to this as well, to multidimensional arrays. The only thing that really you need to get used to is if I want to output all of these items in a row, so if I want to iterate through every single item here, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a for loop like this. So for I assigned to 0 to 2 like this, and then I'm going to add a nested for loop. So I know we might not have covered nested loops or nested if statements in lesson before, but they're pretty easy to understand. So what we're going to do is we're going to say for let's call this y set to 0, and we're going to say 2 like this. We're going to say output, numbers, square bracket I, square bracket y, and then we're going to end this for, and we're going to end we're going to end the initial for loop, the first for loop. So what's going to happen here is when this for loop starts, I is going to be 0, and then as soon as it starts executing the code inside of it, this for loop is going to iterate. So actually what's going to happen is this for loop is going to iterate 3 times before this for loop right here ends for the first time, right? So this for loop, this second for loop, is going to go from 0 to 2 before this for loop has a chance to increase or to increment I to 1, right? Because it's kind of going to be stuck in there until this condition is met or until it's finished. So while this for loop, which is nested inside the main for loop, is running, y is being incremented by 1, while I is remaining at 0. So what this code would look like is, first it would be output numbers 0, 0, which will output from this table right here, index 0. Then it would look like this. It would say 0, 1, because remember y is the one that's being incremented. So it's going to output from table 0, item in index 1. Then I is still going to remain as 0, y is going to be incremented to 2, and is going to output from table 0, item in index 2. So it's going to output 1, 3, and then 5. So now that this for loop has ended, it's going to end completely. Then this for loop gets the chance to increment I by 1. When it starts again, this for loop, y will be assigned to 0 again. So it's kind of like a new for loop. It starts again. So what that will look like now is, let me just write that y again. What that will look like now is the I, which belongs to the main for loop, is going to be a 1 now, but the y is going to be a 0. So what's happening now is we're looking at the next table in line, and we're looking at index 0, so it's going to output the number 2. And then this y is going to be incremented to 1, so it's going to look like this, and it's going to output number 4. And then like this again is going to output 6, and is going to end. The main for loop is going to be incremented to 2, and the same process will repeat itself for these items over here. So the only way to output all of the items in a multi-dimensional array is to use nested loops like this. And again, as I mentioned before, yes, you can use a while loop to do this as well, but a for loop would be much more efficient because you know exactly the amount of times that you are running the loop for. Okay, so have fun.